Folks, good morning. Today we have a very distinguished panel that's going to talk about open protocol, open network, and server-based gaming. So what I want to do is I want to start down with Jason. I'd like them to introduce themselves. Each one of them is, like I said, very distinctive. Jason?
I'm Jason Lowry. I'm Senior Director of Casino Operations here at the Hard Rock Casino. I've been in gaming here pretty much since Oklahoma opened. Been here almost 9 years. Oklahoma opened here in 2005 with Class 3 gaming. So been around casino operations here since 2002 and mostly concentrated in slot operations. Have some finance background, some analysis background as well. So that's about it for me.
Bruce?
My name is Bruce Rowe. I work for Bally Technologies. Been in gaming about 30 years, 23 years on the operator side at both the property and corporate level, and on the manufacturer side since 2003.
My name is Peter de Raad, President of the Gaming Standard Association. I started in gaming in 1986. Most of it, I'm an engineer from background, worked for Aristocrat, and finally landed up in the Gaming Standard Association promoting open standards.
Hello, my name is Rob Samasco. I'm Vice President of Product Management at WMS. I've been in the gaming industry for over 18 years. Been in different positions in the industry, from technology and engineering to what I do today in product management, selecting products going into the marketplace. I've also been on the GSA board for, I think, about 8 years now, promoting GSA standards as well. So excited to be on the panel today.
Cool, thank you. Chris?
I'm Chris Rowe, the Associate Director of Network Gaming for Aristocrat. I started with Aristocrat back in 2004, worked in sales and marketing, and then took a position in downloadable and server-based gaming in 2007. So I've been working on standards implementation across our products and the rollout of our network products.
Well, great. So we want to get right into the questions so we can get as many answered as we can today. This question is for Peter. Peter, for the uninitiated in the room, can you give us a simple explanation of open protocols and open network?
Open protocols allow anybody to exchange information between in our case, games and system. Proprietary protocols have been used for a long time, since the beginning of the 80s. And what it really did is it allowed certain manufacturers to control the market and offer products with certain functionality and features that were only available to those specific vendors. So there was a more market control. Open standards essentially level the playing field, in my opinion, and number two, it will drive innovation in this industry.
Does anyone have any other comments about that, or is that a pretty good explanation as far as you're all concerned? All right. For the board, when we describe protocols as open, do you mean truly open, or open to a point with the major vendors using proprietary technology in conjunction with the open protocols?
Is the question to me?
That's for the members on the GSA.
I'll start. In our view at WMS, the open standards and open protocol allows the core technology to be open for everybody. There is a certain amount of plumbing or structure that's required to operate a gaming system, and that has to be utilized by everybody. Everybody has to understand what those are. However, those standards and protocols that's implemented that allows the floor to run successfully and efficiently, there may be features and options that may be required or requested by an innovator like WMS. We may have specific game applications or other applications that may be utilized by our product that the current protocol doesn't allow. Doesn't mean it's closed. It means that we are utilizing, extending that current protocol across the board. We share that information out with the process with the GSA and with other members. If people want to share and utilize those protocol extensions, they can, for utilizing in their own product. But once again, we're kind of utilizing the GSA standards to extend the core protocol beyond its core mission and extending it out to provide new innovative features and options going forward in the future.
Yeah, this is not different than the internet today. Everybody's using email today, the internet, computer surfing. This was simply not possible without these standards that have been created for the internet many years ago. If you look at your phone, and everybody's got multimedia phones, if you think about the number of standards that are in there, the openness that it allows you to communicate around the world 24/7 without a problem. However, it's the applications and the enhanced functionality that the vendors will come up with, truly the applications on top of that, that will differentiate, in my opinion, these various companies and will drive business from. So for an operator, it's absolutely, in my opinion, paramount that you have an open network that allows you to choose who you want, what you want, when you want it, and at what cost you want it. So I think instead of verticalization, which is the old days of the WAN computers and the IBM computers, I think this industry is about to shift to a horizontal level where you'll be able to pick and choose. It isn't that simple. We're not a revolutionary industry, we're an evolutionary industry, but it's inevitable that these things are going to come to the industry. And this is, the open standards are absolutely the foundations on which this industry, in my opinion, is going to grow.
I'm going to take a slightly different view of that, but let me first clarify how I think about protocols. What GSA has created is essentially a language, and that language is adopted and supported by the industry pretty much at large today. There are a set of messages or classes of messages that are created by GSA. Not all manufacturers use all classes of those messages. And when those messages are received by either sent by the source system or received by the target system, they are not necessarily used the same way. So just because Excel is built on standards from Microsoft doesn't mean that the math automatically works every time you create an Excel spreadsheet. So it's very important also to understand that people need to create new messages. And I think Rob was alluding to that as each one of our businesses evolves, somebody might want to extend the media class, somebody might want to extend the meter class, and so that's how these things evolve over time, which means that there will always be minor differentiation between how each one of the manufacturers both adopts and implements the GSA standards. It's also important to realize we are not a shrink-wrap software industry. We are a business-to-business system provider and game provider in a very small industry as measured by any other part of technology, including cell phones and PCs and other things. So we build business applications and business solutions for a very specific industry, which means that I believe long-term we will have more integration and more interoperability that's easier to do because of the standards we have. But the concept of plug and play everything is probably not either practical or likely in the foreseeable future.
Thank you. That's a good answer. Chris?
So the question was regarding the use of open protocols, and does that mean we use open technology kind of within our boxes? And the makeup of our boxes is very much proprietary at this point, but we use open protocols to communicate between that box and external systems, or that box and other boxes, or that box and bonus controllers and those sorts of things. I would compare it to something like Apple. Rob's sitting next to me with an iPad. It's very proprietary hardware. That hardware is very unique to Apple, and their operating system is proprietary, yet when they need to reach out to enterprise systems or to the internet, they use standard protocols to do that. So this proprietary device can access a network or can access the internet through standard protocols, while the internal makeup of that device is still very much proprietary. At Aristocrat, our games, our platform, is still very much proprietary, but we use these open protocols to communicate with other devices.
From my point of view, from the point of view of the operator in the room, my former point of view, one of the things is, yes, this is proprietary, right? And we understand that. We understand that the companies have to make a dollar. This is droid technology, right? The cost of proprietary software, the cost of proprietary everything is exceedingly expensive and continues to get more and more expensive each year. Some of the best boxes of the folks that are on this panel right now, your box is around $22,000 once you get the game in, all right? I don't see them going down, all right? When we bring up Apple, I watch Apple and the cost of Apple's iPad and their technology is going down, all right? So one of the things that we're going to price ourselves out from where we're at right now, unless we get moving on the open protocol. And the open protocol is a wonderful thing, but it's the interoperability that is most important to the operators out there. If I go out and I get an HP printer and I attach it to another brand of computer, it's going to work. Now, I do have different software. I download that different software and it talks, right? I'm kind of looking for the USB approach, you know, Universal Serial does. I mean, last year, what was it, 2.5 million sold? You know, there's not really a question there, but I'd like to incite some comment on where do you think that we can go with this?
Well, you want to start?
In regards to interoperability and certification, that is key. So we've kind of gone a long journey in the last 8 years of developing protocols as an industry, and we've gotten to a point where we all agreed upon what we're doing, how we're going to do it, and the manufacturers in the industry are starting to implement and or have implemented those protocols. That's the first step. The next step is really that validation of interoperability going forward. We have to make sure that the systems work together and plan to work together and can be certified independently. And that is really the key point that you're making, is that we can't just go to the operator's floor and say it's all going to work because we have implemented those protocols. It's that validation, what we've really learned in the last 2 years of going to marketplace with these open standards and with these open protocols, is that it's that interoperability and validation of that interoperability is really key. Those are the tweaks and little modifications that maybe I've heard and thought I listened to of how the thing may be implemented, but it's that independent validation that's going to make the plug-and-play world more of a reality. It's not going to be perfect, but it's definitely going to be a lot better than it was 5-10 years ago. So, you know, you guys as operators definitely should be requesting and demanding that the products be interoperable, been tested interoperable, as well as certified to be interoperable as well going forward, because that will make your lives easier and really put the industry, you know, at notice, saying we demand, we expect those open standards to be occurring, as well as to be validating that they work across the board.
Thank you.
Yeah, you brought up several points that I noted. One was the reduction in price in Apple products. The second was the increase in the cost of a game. So addressing both of those individually. In the total of North America this year, I think we'll sell roughly 45,000 to 50,000 units across all the manufacturers represented in the industry, the majors. Apple probably sells that in a couple hours. They have an infinite market. Our market can only expand when the government says it can. So we don't have the same scale, we don't have the same economics, we don't have the same infrastructure, and by the way, they're a platform provider, they're not a content provider. And so we don't, when we get compared to people like that, it's an interesting discussion, but it's an irrelevant comparison. We don't have that. They have, what, 68 billion in the bank right now?
68 billion.
$68 billion cash in the bank, and what'd you say, they could run 7 years if they don't sell anything else? Mm-hmm. There's not a manufacturer in the industry that has anywhere near those cash reserves. Secondarily, on the increase in cost, there are several things related to that. But you know, once you buy the machine, we're in the movie business, and about 3 out of 10 succeed. You know, 2 will become blue jeans and khakis and be on the floor for 3 or more years. Probably, I don't know, 3 out of the 10 won't last 6 months. And the rest will be somewhere between 6 months and 2 years. And so we have this combination of art and science that's more like the movie industry than it is, you know, building desktop applications that you can expect to last for a long time. And the other is that operators for a long time, and I'm a recovering operator, so I can speak to this. I think I'm in like the 8th step right now, but the issue is that people look at a lot of the technology on the floor like you do a phone in a hotel room, and that it should last 10 or 15 years. We spend more on laptops for our employees than replacing the technology inside games on an annual basis. I mean, if an employee, you ask an IT person how often should I refresh a person's desktop or laptop, and they're going to tell you on average about 3 years. But we expect the components that go in a slot machine for system connection and doing media management, all that stuff, to last 5 to 7 years. And this is the asset that makes 70% of the revenue and 80% of the profit for most casinos in the world, but we still look at that technology and they're like a point of sale system or like a phone in a hotel room. And I think there has to be a change in mindset about reinvesting in the technology on the floor and looking at it not as an asset that's going to last 5 to 10 years, but something that's going to have to be constantly refreshed to stay up with the market.
I don't think we look towards 5 to 10 years. Most of our reinvestment rates are 4 years. It depends on how long you can advertise the product.
But the FASB rules for most casinos are 5 years on slot machines, as indicated by the AGA, and most companies today still depreciate their IT assets over 5 years or longer.
I can only say I was with 8 casinos, and they were all 4 years. Right? Depreciation was 4 years. Right, so let's go back to that for a second. And Jason, I want to ask you a question. All right, if my relevance wasn't right with the question on comparing it to Apple, let's talk about Google then. All right, Google started at the same time as GSA, right? Where'd we go? Right? Where did we go as compared to where did they go? Right? And I'm not trying to make it confrontational, but let's talk about a few of these. If we're talking about game content and getting game content out there, with open protocols, do we not have the ability to make SDK, software development kits, and open the market just like we did the app market, whether it be Apple or on the Droid platform?
Question at the panel?
Sure, sir.
Well, I'm in a very peculiar situation, heading up a standard-setting organization. Obviously, the majority of our members are manufacturers. Unfortunately, we don't have enough operators because that's paramount, I think, that the operators start to understand the tremendous impact that they can have on driving this gaming industry forward to what you were alluding to. I want to go back before I try to respond to the question. You talked about plug and play, and I think Bruce said maybe plug and play is far away, and I tend to disagree with that. Plug and play on slot machines is absolutely a reality if you use GSA standards. When John Bauschy was moderating a session in August last year for GSA, and John has been, Bruce worked with John for a long time, he was trying to identify the value of GSA's open standards. And the value for an operator will lie in indeed the ability to plug and play a GSA certified machine. GSA is putting a lot of effort into putting in place a certification program over the last couple of years. If the operator really wants plug and play from a gaming machine, he needs to request and demand GSA certified machines. That's what's happening in the Canadian jurisdictions. If you pull up all the latest RFPs from this year, 2011, you'll see in there that they not only specify the software, the version they want, the protocol, what we call it, but more importantly, they specify that the product needs to be certified. And what that means is that this machine gets independently tested to ensure that the GSA standard is correctly implemented. Very much like USB, IEEE, any of these other standards. They all go through a certification program, right? So that's number one. When we talk about opening up the industry, I mean, the point you made with Google was an interesting one 13 years ago, and look where Google is today. And all I can say is, in my position right now, CEM published some great articles from Andrew Cardinal, dating back in 2008. And for the audience, if you don't know, I'd highly recommend you contact Peter Mead and read some of the articles that Andrew Cardinal wrote about the gaming industry, about where this industry could go and how entertainment value could, in my opinion, significantly improve. And guess what? Open standards are the seed that's going to make all this happen. That's the foundations. Without that, you're not going to be able to do that. Whatever everybody else says. So the internet, the brick and mortar and online gaming are going to merge together. This is inevitable. We can look at it and try and hide. We can try and get under a rock. It's not going to happen. So this industry, in my opinion, technology cycles are going to get shorter, innovation is going to get faster, it's going to accelerate. And why? You've asked the question, why has it taken so long? And I think there are 3 components that I've written down. The first of all, when GSF was founded 13 years ago, it was a mindset change. This industry had to get used to collaborating. Oh my goodness, this was a big deal, I'll tell you that. The next big step was intellectual property. Any other standard-setting organization is dealing with the same thing. How do you deal with the intellectual property asset, which is where a lot of companies invest a lot of money in, rightfully so. So how do you deal with that? That's taken a lot of time for GSA to do that. IGT eventually came back on the board many years ago, and to the success of the industry. I mean, the industry is better off by everybody trying to collaborate and sharing or defining common messages. Still allowing the industry to have proprietary extensions and innovation, but have at least common messages, because there's nothing proprietary about getting a meter, getting a security event from a machine. Guys, this is very simple stuff. So it's taken us 13 years to get there. And the last point, I think, is resource impact. You should not underestimate. These companies have been dealing with relatively basic technologies with respect to platforms. And suddenly you had to go into communication technology that was profoundly different. You go from a serial channel to an Ethernet channel, believe it or not. You go from relatively simple graphics and steppers to advanced graphics, 3Ds, and all that kind of stuff. So that has a big impact on resource, R&D departments, marketing, business models, all the kind of stuff a company has to go through strategically, start planning their products. And in this industry, because it is regulated and because there's so much investment made, a ton of investment has been made the last couple of years to adopt these open standards and to change their platforms and get them approved and get the regulators on board, et cetera, et cetera. Right? So we had a big investment made, and I think now is a time where, in my opinion, the industry is going to be able to deal with technology faster because they've done that investment, they have the right people on board. Systems became very, very important because at the end of the day, they allow that bidirectional communication to the end user, which is the player. You're able to shift entertainment value around. You're going to be able to distribute games faster, download them, remote config, all these wonderful technologies. But if it wasn't for the work that GSA as an organization did, which means the vendors collaborating, we would never get to this point. Now things are going to accelerate. They have to. I think the value of GSA has not yet been realized, the value of open standard. The next 3 to 5 years, you're going to see significant acceleration. Yes, you're going to see differentiation. They're all going to compete for the same marketplace, but you know what? That marketplace, in my opinion, is going to grow significantly larger because of the iPads, the iPhones, online gaming, all that stuff that they have to deal with, right? Or they're simply going to be out of business.
Well, and online gaming will put us out of business in the way that
Absolutely.
we're running right now. We can talk about 50,000 machines, 40 to 50,000 machines. If the prices were lower, all right, if the systems communicated better, it'd be 100,000 machines right now, and I can tell you that. And these folks in the room can tell you the same thing.
Can you say that again? I'm sorry, I didn't.
If the systems were more interoperable, if the prices were lower, which they're going to have to be because competition is going to grow, all right, you'd have a lot more sales in the United States. I can guarantee you. All right? Because as an operator, I want more sales. I have a limited budget. I want to get more bang for my buck. All right? That's what I want. Jace?
Yeah, what I can offer from my perspective here is we've talked about several things. We talked about technology is getting faster, and I believe that everybody can feel that. They can feel the technology is getting faster. But we also talked about the lifespan of your assets is getting less and less. So from the perspective of the last few years, there hasn't been a whole lot of capital to go around out there. It's pretty scary to be an operator to think, when do I embrace the technology and go all in? It's more expensive than it used to be. It's moving fast. I don't know when it's going to be obsolete. When's the next version going to come out? Because a lot of these things, they come out with the latest and greatest, and somehow or another, technology is moving so fast that it becomes obsolete before I actually I get the return that I promised my board of directors I was going to get. So that makes it very difficult for folks in operations to go out there and make promises to executive management and live up to them, because you've got to get the return, and it's going to be about the dollars at the end of the day. So I don't have a specific number, but I do agree that people would definitely want to buy more machines. I know from my perspective, I would buy more machines if I could prove that I got a better return on it. And so, we're at a crossroads here where things are moving quickly, and I think that operators are willing to embrace the technology. I think that we've got some fear associated with the cost, especially in market times like this.
All right. Well, we've hit on a whole lot of topics in the midst of this discussion. I think the question started with content sharing and interoperability and that being key. Peter then stated the fact that plug and play is probably closer than we think. And I tend to agree with Peter in the sense that we might be able to plug a game into a system and it will work at some point in the foreseeable future. So we might be able to go to a standards-based casino, plug our game into that system, or maybe plug an application into the back end and it will work. But that still doesn't mean that Aristocrat's game is going to work on Bally's platform. That's not what that means. You hit on the idea of SDKs or GDKs, and Apple has a well-defined software development kit, and that's how they develop apps. But again, the infrastructure on which those apps run is still proprietary at the base level. So plug and play from that sense is not in the foreseeable future. The Aristocrat games running on Bally boxes, and one of the reasons for that is because our platform is a differentiator. And one of the ways I like to explain that is by comparing slot machines to the console gaming industry. You don't see one brand of consoles. You have Nintendo, you have Sony, you have Microsoft, all making their own gaming consoles. And the hardcore gamers out there who really play video games each have their allegiance to one of the systems because of their capabilities. And some of those capabilities have to do with I/O devices in-out. So the controller. I like the feel of the controller. Or it might have to do with the graphics processing power. Or it may have to do with the power of the network that connects those devices between living rooms. So I might buy an Xbox because of the power of the network that connects those devices and the things that I can do over that network. But those operating systems in each of those boxes is still proprietary, and that's what gives them a competitive advantage versus the next person. And I would argue that Aristocrat's platform will probably maintain or stay relatively proprietary so that we can support our fancy in-out devices, our LCD button decks, our gadgets and top boxes, the bells and whistles that still attract players on casino floors today. So while we talk about iPads and little screens and things such as that, I mean, we still have an industry that revolves around fluorescent lights and glitter and mechanical things. And we need the ability to control those things with our platform. We're looking at solutions to bring down the cost of our box, no doubt. We're looking at solutions in terms of the internal makeup of our box that could bring down that price and enable us to have the same control over those devices. Now, when we get to that point, there's some regulations that stand in our way sometimes. So there's still regulations out there that call for socketed chips on boards, which don't exist in the common computing industry today. So if I'm going to move to a laptop device, we have embedded technology. We don't actually go into the laptop and remove chips when we want to change software. So, I mean, gosh, this conversation has spanned a whole lot of territory in a short time, so I was trying to recapitulate. But anyway, so there's regulation, there's apps, there's GDKs. I mean, there's a lot that we're dealing with now, but you know, this idea of plug and play and sharing apps across boxes and getting towards the Apple model, and I guess the last point to that is, you know, when I bought my iPad, it didn't make me $200 a day.
You bring up a couple of good points. Let me throw a couple of good points towards you. By a show of hands to the folks in the room, how many of your, because we talked yesterday, how many of your, what's the age of your average player? How many of them are in the 60s? The average player on the floor right now. By a show of hands, can you hold up your hand? This is what's going to define what we do. Gentlemen? One of our biggest problems out there is getting those kids off of the couch. And by kids, I mean 45 and under now. We are losing our market. Our market is literally dying. All right? And if we don't do something, we all talk about proprietary, and we talk about that base, and it goes back to one of the questions I asked. Are open protocols going to be truly open, or are we still going to stay proprietal at the base? Because if we still stay proprietal at the base, we don't fix this issue. And we end up putting all of us out of business.
I understand all the comments you're making, but I'm confused by them. Are you suggesting that open protocols solves the question of creating product for a particular generation of player? Because that can be done without open protocols. And so, I mean, if we're going to talk about segmentation of demographics and appeal of products, that doesn't necessarily have to do with open or closed protocols.
Right, I was
That's
referring to the
specific
$200
target.
a day unit figure that Chris put out. All right?
I think he was comparing his Apple to a slot machine win per unit per day, I think was the comparison.
I understand that.
Okay. So I just, let me offer 3 comments, okay? If we're talking about software development kits, we are the most highly regulated technology companies probably in the industry, short of making missiles and things for the Pentagon. Okay, our games are approved like drugs go through the FDA. You wouldn't want a pharmaceutical development kit on Google. People would die. And that's the way our products are viewed by regulators. Nevada was trying to get us to not be able to legally use consultants to create graphics for a game, just the graphics. So if I have the best cucumber artist in Singapore, I can't use that cucumber artist to create a game for Nevada. So the creative environment in which we operate in many ways guides the amount of creativity we can have and the amount that the market is open to some of the things that are used elsewhere. And there's a reason for that. And we're held to a very high standard. And when we look at the internet has a lot of great examples of technology. Half the people that run in the internet today could not get licensed in New Jersey. Okay, so there are people in that space that are allowed to operate in that space that we would not be able to do. We have to consider compliance before commerce in the businesses we're in. That's our job. Any one of us up here can lose 300 gaming licenses like that. You saw what just happened with the FBI on, what was it, Black Friday, Black Monday, whatever Black Day it was. You know, we have an obligation to be creative, but at the same time be compliant. And that has largely influenced what we've been able to do on the floor. Regulators would only let us poll slot machines up until very recently, which is why you had serial networks. You didn't need them for anything else. And so we're only just starting to be able to do full high-speed bidirectional communication to a game as recently as in the last 5 years, or even less. So there are industry infrastructure issues, there are industry regulatory issues, and there are competitive structures that exist within the market that we are in that are completely different than shrink wrap, box good, console game kind of markets. We'd love to be in that market. We would love to be in that market, but we can't sell our games at Walmart. You know, we're just not allowed.
If I can add, one of the topics that you covered earlier was in regards to what GSA and Open Standards has accomplished in the last 8 years since Google came on board. In my view, we've actually gone through a very, very, challenging last 5 to 8 years where we've got everybody, as Peter said earlier, agreeing upon what we were going to do. Everybody now has actually agreed that they're doing it, they're actually implementing it if it's not already in the product, as I stated earlier. That's a lot of the heavy lifting that's required for all these new technologies as you're asking for what's the future going to entail to make that happen. That investment will reap rewards for us going forward for the next 10 to 20 years. So without that work, we would be spending our R&D dollars at each of these major companies and all the companies in the gaming industry on developing proprietary protocols. We don't want to go back to the, as I call the dark ages. So don't get us wrong when we talk about these proprietary platforms and other elements. The protocol itself has to be open and has to be something that everybody can use because it is a waste of our R&D dollars if we're going to be focusing on proprietary systems. We spent approximately 40% of our R&D working on protocols which provided no value add, no differentiator from our product compared to another person's product. We needed to move away from that, and that is the future going forward, and we're at that point today. And you will be seeing those benefits going forward. The discussions we've just had was all based upon what cool widgets can we do, what new applications can we do, how do we attack and work on bringing in younger clientele, different clientele into our casinos and gaming environments. By us having those additional dollars to spend at each of our companies allows us to spend our money and our ideas and investment and our brain trust to go after solving those problems, not worrying about if my protocol works on a casino floor. That is not what I want to spend my time and effort on. I want to spend my time and effort on bringing those new gamers into the casino environment and getting them excited about something new in the environment, not worrying about some old technology out there. So I want to make sure we understand where we are at the standards per se, and that we are moving forward, even though we are having good discussions today in regards to how we basically go forward and what things should we be bringing to the marketplace going forward as well.
Thank you.
We've been bouncing around a lot. If I may interject a little here, is that I understand where you're coming from. I'm from Bally's. I came from outside the industry, worked for Hewlett Packard for a long time. And it is a struggle as the industry shifting. Your value propositions in hardware, your value proposition was in this one place, and trying to adapt to a new value proposition is challenging. So the extreme of, hey, you know, a VGT box, you're running your apps on everybody, that's very extreme. I absolutely agree with you as far as, you know, all of us are spending a lot of R&D dollars on something that the customer doesn't value. You know, the protocol, that's plumbing. They don't care how it gets there, they care whether it works. And getting that burden off of a lot of product developers is fantastic. Now, I'm working for a relatively small company, DigiDeal, and just having to interoperate with all the back-end providers, all the unique player tracking systems, all these things is tedious. I spend way too much development money just having to deal with that, because I would venture to say that, you know, the Bally's player tracking touch panel versus the IGT, there's not a whole lot of visible difference between them. It's the content that's on them that matters, and how it makes the operator more efficient in their operation. That screen, they're relatively the same, but there's unique physical attributes, there's proprietary cabling. That's adding a lot of cost in the industry and a lot of headache for a lot of people. So I, for one, would love to divert my development dollars to my own content, you know, development, so that I know when I plug into a back-end system, it works. It physically fits in my product. My products take 7 to 8 of the player tracking units per product. That's a lot of headache, you know, if I have to support everybody's back end. So, you know, I think that the open protocols is fantastic. I hope we don't jump to this leap to refute the value of it by saying, hey, I'm not going to run IGT software on my box. I mean, that's very extreme, but this is a great step forward to hopefully getting better content, you know, for the operators, for the customer, you know, content that's valued, for sure.
And I think that's an important point. For someone like DigiDeal, for a smaller company that we might want to put on the floor, the protocol is going to help us out a lot. Right now we've got barriers to innovation out there because of proprietary pieces of equipment, and that raises money. So, any other comments on this?
One comment. To further to what you just said, I'd like to inform this group, for those operators in the room, that GSA has created a while ago an Operators Advisory Committee. The purpose of that committee was very specific. It's to bring the operators in the room, share the same challenges that you have, communicate them to the board, which is the industry, right? Because operators can be part of the board as well as manufacturers, and identify which have the highest priority or urgency to be resolved. That's what GSA does. Operators might not be fully aware of it, but I think it's very important because it is a committee that's been heavily utilized by the Canadians 3 years ago when they all joined, the regulators/operators, and I highly encourage any other operator who has challenged that they'd like to communicate to further to benefit the industry to participate. And GSA provides that environment as a non-profit association for the industry to collaborate, addressing the concerns that all of you are raising at different levels. So.
Yeah, we're making huge progress. The main areas of progress have been in the adoption of G2S, the game to system protocol, and in the S2S system to system protocol. And so the connections that we're speaking about from the game up to the slot management systems typically are getting much more efficient. And when Peter and I started on this thing, I don't know, 10, 12 years ago, we had a list of, I think, I don't know, 64 protocols or something that we were using to run in the industry. And every year that got smaller and smaller and smaller. And so we're now down to basically 2 protocols that are running the connection of the games to the systems. We have SAS and we have G2S. At our current replacement rate of games, the migration that we have today is somewhere between 20 and 30 years based on current capital spend. And so we are going to be in a dual protocol world for some period of time. And so as you look at our responsibility as both game and system providers, but particularly system providers, we're going to have the engineering resources to do both for at least a decade. And operators are going to say, why doesn't this work on game A and it works on game B? And there's only certain things you can only take SAS so far. It's like DOS and Windows. And that's the comparison that I use, is the DOS to Windows transition. And we're going to be in that transition for some period of time. Some operators that are open brand new casinos, they're obviously going to move further down that curve faster. People that have restricted capital are going to be at the back end of that curve and have a larger percentage of their floor still running SAS. But we are right in the middle of that migration right now, and we're learning as much about the new protocols as we are how to operate both protocols simultaneously on an existing floor. And by the way, that's not a small task because our systems have to be able to see both of those, and the technology that goes inside the game has to be a protocol converter or translator so that we can provide the same kind of integrity and reliability of metering that we do with either protocol.
But at a significantly reduced functionality, because the SAS protocol is very, very limited in its capability of providing functionality on operator. I mean, a protocol, for those people who don't know the word, is nothing else than a set of messages going back and forth. It's a communication channel. It's the ability to communicate, in this case, between a system and a player, which is through that window. And if you look at the boxes these days, Bruce, I mean, the top glass is a display, the screen is a display, the bottom sometimes is display, the buttons are displays. So what does it tell you? It tells you flexibility. So it tells you innovation. It tells you that the industry is preparing themselves for rapid change of content, etc. But you need that foundation, that pipe through which information can flow, not that little wire like the old days where you had to dial up on a fax machine. That's gone. But it has a profound impact on the technology, on the R&D centers of all our manufacturing. I think this is why I think you made the statement last week, Rob. GSA really, the value of GSA will be realized over the next 3 to 5 years.
No
right?
question.
But you have to participate in this. If you really want to make a difference, you know, join the organizations. We were founded 13 years ago for a specific reason. And you can help accelerate that innovation in this industry. So.
Peter, how do they get involved?
They can just simply go to gamingstandards.com, to the website, and you can find all the information on there. You can call me if you got concerns about it. GSA is in the middle of reviewing membership dues, licensing fees, etc., because GSA does not have a foundational sustainable revenue model in place. As a non-profit organization, we have to hire consultants to do the work. If we solely rely on dues and the membership goes up, that's great. Well, what happens if the membership goes down? We can't use us consultants anymore. So we are right in the middle of heavy discussions with the board to put a sustainable model in place, because the industry needs to fund an organization like ourselves if they want to achieve the final objective, right, which is what you talked about. So don't hesitate to give me a call and talk about it if you want to get involved, to any ideas you have. But I think it is very, very important. There's a lot of heavy lifting that's been done. There is certification ready. Plug and play for a gaming machine is definitely there. The infrastructure is put in place, but we are a small group of people trying to manage an industry that's pretty large. So give me a call, gamingstandards.com, and we'll talk about it.
Okay, wonderful. If Jason as an operator wanted to get into your organization, what's the fee structure for an operator?
Okay, the current fee structure, as I said to you, is pretty high, and that's there are 3 membership levels to date. We are looking at changing that rapidly, however. And the fee structures are $20,000 per year, or $21,400 a year, $32,100 a year, and $80,250. There are different levels. Simply put, the silver, you have no voting rights, but you can participate in all discussions. The golds, you have voting rights. Again, you can participate in all discussions. And the platinums, which are $80,000, they're board seats. I mean, you have obviously voting rights, but also board seats. Now you say, my God, these dues are very high. I don't disagree. But there's a reason for that. We were a small group of people trying to get work done, and the board decided to continuously increase the dues because they felt it was better spent in an organization to foster collaboration than spend the money anywhere else. Now, how do we go back? And for that, I think we put our thinking caps on. It's about how do we going to fund the organization to the point that we don't have to worry about it, we have the foundational money in place. And for that, we're talking about licensing the technology that we have developed. There is $17.5 million invested in the last 13 years by membership dues alone. That's not taking in consideration the indirect cost of people who travel, hotel rooms, etc., which I estimate the total to be between $40 and $60 million. These are significant numbers. That's not even talk about the R&D that some of these companies invest to actually change the platforms, which is anywhere between 20, 30, 40, $50 million. That money needs to be recovered. And GSA as an organization has always been giving this thing away. How do you get standards in a market? Well, if you give it away, you hope that the industry will finally realize that there's a benefit and adopt them, right? If you charge a price for that, I said, why would I want to do that? So we've given them away. Now is the point in time that GSA needs to make sure it gets properly funded to continue its work, which is vital for the growth of the industry. And for that, we're going to now have to put structures in place that we charge for it. I think it's only fair. And these fees are going to be small, maybe $50, $100 a box, or whatever it happens to be. But this is a way to us to continue the work we do. So I highly encourage for operators and even vendors, talk to me, participate if you can, and let's see how we can, advance the industry, because it's these collaborations with these guys who've been with us for 12 years, 13 years, Bruce, right? And the operators will really make a difference. And they do have a voice, and they can make a difference. Yeah. But we have to allocate the resources that we have, to address the challenges that we have.
We want you to make money. We absolutely want you to survive because we have no content without you.
Well, we don't make money. I mean, we try. Okay, these guys made. Okay, I'll get out of the picture.
Yeah, exactly. So one thing actually I want to follow up in discussion before, as we said, going forward, this should allow us to have more dollars spent toward doing these innovations. Bringing in, and I think the comment was that older clientele is their core clientele. Well, WMS sponsors an annual active gambler survey and a report that can be found at activegambler.com. The people that were traditionally what we were calling our core players, we called them our frequent attenders at gaming halls. 31% of the total market in the United States were those people. Those are older people that don't have kids, that are out there that we consider our traditional player. 41% in this survey in North America were young single females, and they are the casual player. So you asked about how do we get those new players into casinos. They're coming, but how do you get them interested in spending more dollars and getting others involved? So that's 41%. That's greater than 31% of what we consider our core players. And then 28% we're calling our avid players, our avid gamblers. And those are middle-aged folks making over $75,000 a year that are married with children. So you realize that we always focus on this 31%, that these are the people that are dying off. We need to make sure we bring in new people, a new clientele. We've got them into casinos. There are more people to come in. The question is, how do we get the people that come in casually and not as often to come in more, spend more dollars in a more entertaining environment and activity that they're excited about playing? So once again, standards, great, fantastic. Let's spend those dollars toward the future and getting those basically casual players to the casino floor, spending more dollars, which is really going to make you guys more money. And then these fees that we talked about are insignificant. What we're trying to do is well worth the investment that we're talking about here going forward. So that's what we have to focus in on that 41% of the 28% of the people that are coming in casually. So
when we talk about the ages, we talked about it in the class yesterday. So I kind of had some advanced information on you guys as to how old their staffs were, or their customers.
If I could also make one comment about open standards, and Peter's done a brilliant job on this. I can't remember when it was, 6, 7 years ago at a board meeting. He talked about the importance of starting to develop relationships internationally, and he's really done a stellar job. But if you think protocols are complicated in the United States, you really need to take a look outside. And we've had huge impact in emerging markets so that there's not an increased divergence of protocols. And so we've been able to, in emerging markets, get them to adopt GSA standards at the early formation of a market. And then in other markets like Australia, who operated on proprietary protocols since its inception, is working to adopt GSA protocols. And so much of the work, kind of to talk about something I did earlier, is our market is actually expanding for the use of standard protocols internationally because of this. And so the work that's done at Aristocrat and at Williams and at Bally and every manufacturer can now be leveraged across the world. We're not having to do as much unique country adaptations, excuse me, that we used to.
Opens up markets, yep.
Yeah, I would second that. So at Aristocrat, I think at one time our D&D staff or R&D staff was supporting something like 62 versions of our platform simultaneously because we're licensed in over 200 jurisdictions around the world. We're down to 4 different versions of our Gen 7 platform, and we're working towards 2 very quickly within the next 18 months, and we're hoping to get to 1 within the next 3 years. So we've simplified that process tremendously, which benefits not only D&D, but internal controls and submission costs, and a lot of that has to do with open standards. Our world base right now is fully G2S. We're in the process of getting it certified, and so we're fully committed to this idea of interoperability and plugging games into systems. Just to make that clear, I know we did have this debate about interchangeability of content and the secret sauce and all that, but that by no means downplays the significance of this interoperability and being able to talk to systems in not only the United States but across the world.
Yeah. Good point.
Very cool. That was a great point.
Do you mind if can I ask a question? I know I'm not moderating.
You are
I'd like
now.
to ask a question at least. From the GSA and the vendor side, do you feel like there's resistance from an operator's perspective to open protocols, or do you think that most operators have embraced the concept of open protocols?
Right. Everybody, I'm sure, will want to respond to this. I don't think there is any philosophical disagreement with the adoption of protocols. In fact, I think when you speak to people, it's hard to dispute that you'd want that. One of the issues is that the new protocols that we have require either replacement of a game in order to get it, or replacement of a network in order to be able to use it. And so SAS was a serial-based protocol. Most of the floors were not ready for Cat 5, Cat 6. They weren't Ethernet. And so to exploit the value of many of the things that are being built for and require G2S, you have to invest in that infrastructure. And then the question is, can I do it on every game? And do I have that value? And does that justify the return on investment? I think the protocols had to precede the infrastructure. The infrastructure is now coming, and the applications are now starting to come to market that actually are showing the ROIs on this investment. But it took time for those 3 things to converge. But again, this next 3 to 5 years seems to be the agreed to horizon when you're going to see this value that can actually be deployed and measured across the whole floor.
If I could follow up on that, I definitely agree with Bruce's comments, and I definitely see that in the last 12 months we actually have the aggressive operators moving forth with adoption, requiring, mandating the standards to be implemented. And this is the phase where they're sort of the test and beta sites that things are going on. And you realize that we've had 2 major complete new casino openings occurring in the last 12 months that have gone out to the marketplace. And for the most part, the protocol is basically swapping out the internal plumbing. All regulatory, all meters, all auditing actually worked and was successful on the floor from a launch perspective. So it's your comment about the plumbing that you're working on. When you buy a house, do you ask them how the plumbing is? Do you ask them? Do you look at the pipes? You don't care about that. You all care about the bells and whistles. But that plumbing went through, was implemented, was working, interoperable on that floor without any regulatory glitches. And that's a big, huge hurdle that was accomplished. So that's really a success and actually a push by the operators demanding, that operator specifically, demanding that I want interoperability and I want GSA standards. I think in the next basically 2 years you're going to have the fast adopters, people requesting it and demanding it to happen. and then you'll have the laggards. And not saying it's a problem, but you may have a low sense of risk in regards to going on your floor. You want everybody else to prove those things out, and that will happen. But as Bruce said, us as manufacturers currently, as well as new manufacturers coming online, will bring applications with these new protocols on board that will require or have you strongly encourage us to actually make that happen. We have to give you a reason and a purpose that you're going to have that ROI return to your floor. And so it's not going to be done because you're not swapping your entire house out in the next 5 years. It may be 10 years, it may be 12 years. But if we give you a sense of a reason why you have to do it, we know that if it brings in more players into the casino floor, then we've done our job to make that happen. But it is going through the normal phases of major technology changes that those fast, aggressive adopters are going into the field now in the last 12 months, and you will see that progression going forward. So I don't think it's any type of resistance from operators. I think it's your sense of risk, because you guys are running a business and you guys are trying to generate revenue and maintain yourselves through this tough economic times, and we know that's a challenge, talking about throwing in a brand new technology and systems onto your floors.
Yeah, to that point, if any of you were here last year, we actually we touched on this comparison, but I like to compare the network gaming movement within the gaming industry to HD television. So there was a standard created for HD television in 1983. So 1983 is when they defined the color imagery, the aspect ratio, the scan rate, and all that, so that content providers and television manufacturers could build the hardware and then also manufacture the content that would be displayed in HD televisions. 1983. I bought my first HD television in 2007 because that's when it was compelling, right? HD televisions went mainstream in 1999 is when you could first buy them, so that's 16 years from the adoption of the standard to sale of first units on shelf in store. And 1999, there weren't a whole lot of HD televisions sold because content didn't exist. So there may have been 2 or 3 channels available in HD. Was that a compelling buying proposition? For some who liked sports and would watch ESPN, they bought HD TVs in 1999. But for the people who needed a robust content library and 270 channels, they didn't buy until 2007. So the early adoption period started in 1999 and went through the mid-2000s, and now just about everything is HD TV, and the federal government has discontinued support of analog television. So that was kind of the movement of that cycle in another industry, and I'd say as compared to that 20-year period, the gaming industry is actually moving pretty quickly in terms of adoption of the standard, implementation into our products, and then moving on to the early adopter phase.
Well, to that point, if we can go there. All right, you're saying that we're advancing quickly, and that's wonderful. Who are our early adopters? How many floors out there are completely DSA protocol situated?
So we've had a couple of major new casino openings lately that have gone full high speed, full G2S. Rob talked to those a minute ago. Most of the major lotteries are issuing public documents, requests for purchases, and within all of those major lotteries, request for purchase documents, they specify G2S as a requirement. So you're starting to see that movement there, and that's a large number of games across those video lottery networks that are being refreshed at the moment. So you're starting to see adopters at the government level in the video lottery space. Any of the new casino openings going forward, those guys are really seriously considering G2S and high-speed networks. And then, gosh, I mean, I've had little casinos in towns that I don't even know in northern Nevada call up and say, we're not buying another one of your games until you can download from our system. What? Who are you? Who are you and where'd you come from? I haven't even heard of the town you live in and you're requesting this sort of stuff. So, I mean, it's kind of across the board. We've got small casinos who have found some sort of value in having this high-speed network and dynamic content and value-added applications on the back end who are really forcing us to move in this direction. And then we've got the big dogs who are really leading the pack.
I think the game floor at the game is still, in many cases, even the newest casinos that have opened, a mixture of G2S and SAS games. What is consistent is the use of G2S as the protocol to communicate from the game to the system. And that's very prevalent in a lot of casinos today. And you're seeing things with the media class that we've never seen before. We did a simultaneous broadcast to over 3,000 devices coordinating multicasting of media using G2S protocols and high-speed floors. Never been done before in the industry, to our knowledge. So these things are out there, and the early adopters are starting to use them for things, even simultaneous broadcast of TV, simultaneous broadcast of bonusing and tournament kind of events happening at the system level. So you're starting to see a lot of it. And S2S has been deployed, and it's quietly used in the background for connecting systems very efficiently in ways that we didn't do before.
Yeah, that's exactly what I wanted to touch on briefly on the point Bruce closed with S2S. Our current chairman of the Gaming Standard Association came to me 6 years ago in Reno on a gloomy night in December, I'll never forget, and he had a problem. He was running at that point in time a Class 2 operation, multiple back-end servers, and he was unable to use a ticket from one game to the other because the player was confused. They couldn't put player cards in operation, and they could not get the ticket in, ticket out to work between gaming machines. So I said, Peter, we have a challenge. I said, okay, what's the challenge? The end of the day is the operator had to go down to the technical level to understand what the challenge was, communicate it to GSA, and within the next 12 months, GSA as an industry found a solution. It's called the S2S protocol. That's now used in the Seminoles, and he made the statement to me, if it wasn't for GSA standards, the Seminoles would not have been able to purchase $960 million to buy the Hard Rock brand. Think about that. It's pretty significant. Now, going back even forward, in the Bellagio, I met in the beginning of the end of the 90s, I met a guy who was a vice president of slots and said, and I was talking to him about open standards and the importance of them, and typically operators don't care about protocols. If I have a phone, it's a 3GS phone or a 4G phone or a GSM phone, you don't care about that thing. You read it, it's a GSM, you have no idea what it means, right? At the end of the day, it's about the functionality that device enables and how you can differentiate your products between your competitor, right? The standard shouldn't really matter. But that specific vice president wanted a slot machine from a specific manufacturer, a series of manufacturers, and was unable to get that. And he was trying to figure out, why can't I buy this in the marketplace? And guess what? He had to learn the word protocol. He had to look it up because somebody said it's because of the protocol. I said, what the hell is a protocol? So he Googled it and whatever, and finally found out that, the true importance of open standards. So I'm giving you just a few examples as to how important it is. An operator really should know about it, but right now you better know about it because it makes a big difference to your operations if you start planning in the long term for revenue generation.
I was waiting for somebody to bring up Class 2. I've been sitting here waiting for it because these folks in here were operating 4 and 5 different tickets if they had 4 and 5 different vendors. So that was a huge fix.
Yeah. And Peter mentioned Seminoles. They've been running a high-speed Ethernet floor probably for 9 years. Yeah. And also operating G2S and SAS simultaneously, and operating Class 2 and Class 3 commingled on the floor, and using S2S to get system data out of Class 2 systems into a Class 3 slot management system. So they've been able to utilize GSA protocols very effectively and have been an early adopter of this 2-protocol management challenge. They've been very effective at it.
We grabbed the Bally's One system like a drowning man when that came, because that's a tough deal.
Yeah.
So, any other comments you want to make on the open protocol and network? Not that you can't go back. But.
At WMS, just kind of we'll plug WMS here. We about a year ago implemented our first G2S protocol out in the market space and been running that protocol for the last year. We have 12 installations in North America, running systems out there speaking G2S. Every product that we're producing today in the Class 3 environment actually does have the ability to speak G2S, so our products are compatible going forward. So this is something you're probably going to hear from all the manufacturers. Once we do the work and heavy lifting, as I talked about before, it's in the product. It can switch between either or. And so it will become something, as Peter said, 5 years from now, people won't be asking. But we do need to ask those questions today on a going forward basis. But the good news is, like I said, it's in the products, and it's in a lot of the manufacturers' products going forward. They are quietly operating in certain locations in one version or the other, and working either in some manufacturers in SaaS and as well as G2S on the same property, because not all the manufacturers are up with the latest products, and not all the products are at the latest level of that technology supporting G2S. But going forward, as I said before, last 12 months operating and running, and I know multiple manufacturers are successfully communicating via G2S as well. So that's some successes going forward as well.
Sure, and we'll share some success stories as well. About 3 years ago, our jackpot controller, so the controller that sits between the games and increments progressives in the meters across the top boxes and in the overhead signage, it was nearing end of life, and so it was unsustainable. So Aristocrat went back and decided we were going to develop a homegrown jackpot controller. And when architecting that solution, the GSA standards were around, as well as kind of the latest in programming languages, C#, .NET, all that. So we went back, refactored the jackpot controller, used the latest in programming languages plus G2S, and that's been live out on floors since 2009. And it's a fascinating tool in that when we were running serial and stuff, there was only so much we could do, but with that high-speed bidirectional communication, we're getting much more information from the slot machine itself, and then from the player, and then from the jackpot controller, we can return things faster, and we can return kind of more interesting things to the slot machine. So the way we're incrementing progressives is differently, the way we're displaying progressives is different. We're doing all sorts of neat things with player-to-player connection in banked and linked environments now through G2S on floors, and we have been since 2009, and probably not a lot of operators know that, because it's a little controller that sits in a bank with Ethernet cables hooked into it, but it doesn't rely on a floor-wide network. We're doing it in small instances, and it's pretty seamless to both the operator and the player.
First, let me say that I love this panel. These are kind of like, I hate to get on panels and just answer read the email responses that we figured out before we got here. So thank you. This has been good.
I put my laptop.
As the group that's up here and the companies we represent have been involved in GSA since the beginning. So we have these kind of debates in board meetings. We have them in work sessions. But Aristocrat, and when Peter was there, was one of the founding companies. Bally was a founding company. I represented one of the early adopters from the operating side. Williams, and we've been on this thing for decades, literally now. So these are exactly the kind of discussions we have, and internally in the meetings, we have the same discussions trying to represent the operator needs as well as the balance with our manufacturing world. We are in the throes of implementing this stuff. Where we found the biggest impact so far has been in our system business with regard to Display Manager and being able to use the G2S class down to the device that goes inside the game, and then to be able to use that as a protocol converter, take it directly G2S into the game for G2S compliant games, and then also use that to be able to support SaaS, so we have a backward and a forward migration strategy for the next 10 years. And we've also been able to do these great media-driven type events on any game from any manufacturer, which allows us to create the excitement we're talking about for different target segments, different time of the day, different genders, different ages, different different product lines. And so I think that this, as we see these high-speed networks, if there's one thing though that doesn't get mentioned often, if G2S requires a high-speed Ethernet floor, that's a fundamental change to the way the floor is operated. In the past, those networks were provided by us as manufacturers, and now that responsibility typically sits in the property in the IT department. And managing these high-speed networks is very complicated business. When you start running streaming video to 4,000 devices simultaneously, that is not a small task. And if you think your network is perfectly balanced and you got all your load balancers in line and everything's perfect, wait until you start squirting live video down to 4,000 games, you find out something very different. And so we're learning along the way how to do those things, but we're learning quickly, and we're creating that knowledge base, all of us as manufacturers in different ways, to bring you some really new and exciting stuff.
I didn't know spanning tree until that happened. Yeah. and I very, very much know spanning tree now. Jason, everyone's gotten a word of positive reinforcement to say about their organization, so I want you to get a chance as well.
That's what the panel.
Yeah, well, I'm not. We don't have a huge G2S success story to share with everybody today, but from our perspective, we're not unfamiliar with what we need to do to get our floor up to speed. Coming from Class 2 environments here across the state, we've had server-based gaming for a lot of years that probably some of the more developed jurisdictions haven't had to experience. So we have some of that same experience that the Seminoles had, and probably right on the tail end of their successes whenever we came in and noticed that we needed a ticket-in, ticket-out solution as well. So I think from an operator's perspective about open networks, I think that what I can say to the developers is that you're going to get buy-in from the back end. People are on board with what a network and the cabling and the Ethernet and high speed, they're on board with how that's going to work. And a lot of folks in this state are already managing that network, or at least part of the cost associated with it. The big concern and the big question looking forward is going to be what the operators care about most is game content and how that's all going to work and how's that going to interface with my guest. And ultimately, we've got to build that bridge between the guest, the operator, and the developer in a strong manner, because after a few years, it comes and goes in different engineering shops and sales shops and different manufacturers, but engineering and sales may not always be on the same page, and it works the same way in a lot of different companies. So and oftentimes guest behavior changes on the floor, and operators didn't anticipate that as well. So there's going to have to be a high level of coordination and cooperation in order to really get the true power of what the open network is going to give. And I think that the operator is going to look at the true game content and how that's going to be displayed so that I can see value and I can see my costs go down, as opposed to the back end. We're building the plumbing and the infrastructure now. I think the real concern is going to be, when am I going to be able to experience and get, furthermore, when am I going to be able to get my guests interfacing with this technology of some sort. We're going to have a strategy as operators to say, do I want to market a technology? Does my guest care? Am I trying to get a new guest because of the technology? Or am I just going to confuse everybody that's already out there? So there's a lot of questions that need to be answered, but I think that conversations like this are what's probably going to push things forward. I think we're fairly close on the back end, but I think we've yet to really tackle how the game content's going to work. And that's going to be a major issue from an operator perspective.
Well, I know we don't have a lot of time about that, but that's a wonderful transition, as was Rob's. We're going to talk about server-based gaming briefly, then open the floor up to questions. But I know I'm one of those early innovators. I was also one of the 12 properties that you have out there that are utilizing your GSA stuff now. I've operated both IGT, WMS, and the Acres server-centric 4.0 systems for server-based gaming. Can you each briefly, I'm not saying briefly, but if you can each explain what you have for server-based and get a chance to maybe do a little bit of a sales pitch on what you got.
We adopted the term the network floor of the future a while ago, because server-based gaming is a way that computers talk to each other. And actually, if you look at the world today, we're doing more peer-to-peer computing than server-based. So it's a bit confusing, because it's great IT chat at cocktail parties about server-based versus peer-to-peer. But what we focused on was the functionality that we wanted to provide to the customer. Originally, this stuff started in 2003 when I remember Michael Pollack had a quote that server-based gaming is more than a reality, it's hurtling. It is more than a thought, it's hurtling towards reality, and that was 2003. Where we are today is that we focused on marketing first, customer and employee service second, and dynamic revenue management third. And so what we focused on is second chance to win kind of opportunities, sometimes called bonusing, at the point of play and in a way that's relevant to the customer, using game mechanics they're familiar with, very simple things, but moving mailbox money to the game. And so we've been hard at that, and we do that through a combination of iView, Display Manager, and the Elite Bonusing Suite. Those things then are linked into our business intelligence system because there has to be an engine that creates the logic to decide what to do. It's very easy to say, I want to change a game from 1 cent to 2 cents or from 4% to 6%. The question is, who makes that decision and what tools do they have to measure the results? And so all these things are very tightly coupled between the command center, the slot management system, and the BI tool. So there's a triangle that exists up there. So we can decide who to bonus, we can decide which games to change, we can decide which marketing content to push down, and we can discreetly market to a customer by individual. So we can now individualize what they see and what they get and when they get it and why they get it to a person on a game. And that's enabled by GSA standards. And so that's a combination of S2S, it's a combination of G2S and the media class in particular, but that's how we do those things. Largest installation on a high-speed floor today is on about 1,300 games from 5 different manufacturers. And one of the things that I will share with you is we went at this very carefully to make sure that all these ideas weren't disrupting the player and driving down win per unit. It was not hard to envision that we could do that very easily by distracting people and letting them tweet or check their eBay bids while they're playing a game. All those are possible because all this stuff's web-based, but those are the things that we're deploying right now. Tournament products and marketing at the point of play are the ones that are getting the most attention.
WMS has implemented the network gaming system we call WageNet. It has a number of elements. I'll kind of cover 2 right now. One focused more toward the operator, focus on the remote configuration and download. Obviously, that's the core technology as part of the GSA standards of basically driving content to your floor. But those capabilities allow you to download games and content, percentages, configurations on the floor efficiently, however you want to, when you want to. Versus on the weekend, versus on a weekday, changing those denominations. And so that's operating on a number of floors in North America. And we view that's one of the areas that once it's all floor wide, you guys are able to run across the entire floor for all manufacturers, that will drive efficiency on your floor, saving you money. But once again, you have to have the tools to make that happen. So we've have a set of tool suites that allow you to manage your floor based upon the information that is provided to you from the open standards and from G2S. Basically real-time information, real-time data to basically change your floor, meet and greet customers whenever jackpots may occur because you have that real-time data, things that you may have not been able to do before without moving forward with open standards. But what WMS is really known for is really driven from the player side, that excitement, that gameplay activity that we think are going to drive those new younger players or different players into the casino. We have bank-level solutions. We know that the floor is not going to go NG all at once. So our adoption for NG has been bank level, that we focus on the customer, the player, and basically have implemented bank level solutions that allow the operator to enable and disable bonusing features on all our products on the casino floor, running G2S. So you may have a base game that you have on your floor today, and you know that a certain feature, option, a bonusing game we have currently out in the market space called Ultra Hit Progressive, that allows you to have a progressive to be able to run on any base game on your floor, enabling and disabling it and putting it on your floor in different locations on the fly without having to move hardware and technology across the board. So it allows that flexibility, that efficiency to drive you to manage and monitor your floor and change it on the fly however you need to, as often or as little as possible, in providing those technologies. But we view that that's really just the start. having the information coming to you, having the information on the product allows us to generate new gaming concepts that may have not been thought of before because we're moving away from serial communication into Ethernet communication. We also have a product that is in the marketplace today that allows gameplay to happen on the casino floor and for bonuses to be unlocked at home through a login window. And that login window allows you to actually get your players that are on your computers at home running basically gaming-free type of products, not for win, basically for fun, and allowing them to unlock bonuses. So they're thinking about your casino, thinking about the product itself at home, and then generating them to come back to the casino to have those bonuses unlocked on your casino floor. So those are the kind of cool new technologies that we think are going to excite the players, are going to motivate those new players to come to your casino floor and generate more revenue for you, not just move the money around on your casino floor today. So that's some of the new technologies that we're taking advantage of in the network gaming world.
Thanks, Rob.
So Aristocrat's a little unique when it comes to network gaming in that we actually have two forms of network gaming. One is server-supported gaming, and the other is server-based gaming. And Valley and WMS have thus far talked about what we call server-supported gaming. WMS has a product that is server-based as well, I think, and then their Ultra Hip Progressive has some server-based elements to it. But I'll start with our server-supported. So server-supported is GSA standards based, moving content around the floor, opening windows on games. The developments that we've done in the server supported space, this is where the server has no bearing on the outcome of the game. So the actual slot machine, all the outcomes are calculated within the game, no dependency on the server. We have a G2S platform in our Gen 7 that we can sell into multiple manufacturers' systems and download, configure, and deploy a window natively. So our Gen 7 platform has been enhanced to talk G2S so that we can pop out that window, and from that central management hub, be it Valley, be it IGT, be it WMS, as long as they're standards-based, they can download content. And we have a library of content that sits on a repository and you can download to our game. So that's kind of a plug-and-play solution, if you will. We can put our games with our content library into third-party networks. We've also done the controller that we talked about, where our controller has that high-speed communication with the games, and we're doing neat things with gameplay. So that's connecting players, innovating in terms of styles of play, and that more community-type experience. Then there's the system. So then on the system side of things, we're implementing a G2S front end to that. Not quite done with that, but we do have the ability to drive windows and download content, but it's not quite standards-based. So on the system side of things, we've been running high-speed networks for the last 3 years. We just haven't been doing it over standards. So we're using Ethernet to download content to player tracking devices, run real-time targeted promotions and those sorts of things. It's not standards-based yet, but it will be. So then on the server-based side of things, we have a product that's actually completely dependent on the server to drive outcomes. And this is, again, outside of the standards realm, but what it does is it prepares us for internet, if we ever wanted to go there. So we have a server-based platform where all the outcomes are actually determined on the system. So you get the system certified to dictate outcomes to any sort of unsecured terminal. So the terminal can be a slot machine, and we've ported our client to slot machines so that our back-end system can drive outcomes to those slot machines. We've also ported that client to iPads, we've ported it to PCs, we've ported it to in-room TV, so that you can use that server to drive outcomes to unsecured terminals across the network. Right now, that server-based solution is a private network, meaning either in casino or across a large geographic area, but it's still it's private. It's locked down, it's not public, it's not internet, it's not web. But at some point in time, if we wanted to, we could open that up, push it over a bigger pipe, distribute it over the web, and we'd have an internet solution. Neat thing about that is we have an S2S bridge between that that server-based solution that exists now in the field and our server-supported solution that can exist in casinos today. So if we wanted to take our casino management system, bridge it to our server-based system, we could transfer player data back and forth and report on a player once across both mediums. So server-supported, in casino, class 3, the evolution thereof, what we're doing today, server-based, preparing for kind of the next generation.
Thank you. We don't have much time for questions. So if you would be so patient as to hopefully these folks will stick around for just a minute to answer any questions you have. I apologize, this has been a huge subject. Our time is now out. I think we have like 30 seconds. So thank you so much, gentlemen. I can't tell you how much I've appreciated this.